The Galactic Accord's high-security summit chamber hummed with tense voices, its curved walls of polished asteroid mineral designed to contain sound as much as to impress. 43 delegates from 22 spacefaring civilizations sat in concentric rings, their faces illuminated by the holographic display of Caldera 7 floating at the chamber's center. The mining operations have been reduced to slag. Admiral Sura announced, her weathered face betraying no emotion. Her uniform, adorned with the Accord's starburst insignia, seemed to absorb the blue light of the projection. 3 outposts destroyed. 42 armed teams vanished. The Searing Pack leaves no survivors. Perhaps, Ambassador Lecco interjected, his four-fingered hands splayed in a gesture of diplomacy. We should consider abandoning the Caldera system entirely. The geological instability alone. Abandonment is not an option. The voice came from Dr. Mara Wynn, chief xenobiologist for the Accord's Frontier Development Division. Caldera 7 contains 36% of known stellarite deposits in this sector. The material is essential for quantum stabilizers. Without it, interstellar travel beyond neighboring systems becomes impossible within the decade. Dr. Tessa Arden sat at the outermost ring, attention divided between the debate and her datapad. As a behavioral ecologist specializing in apex predator socialization, she had been summoned to provide insight into the crystalline fluids that had decimated human presence on Caldera. Yet, in the 3 hours of heated discussion, she had been called upon exactly 0 times. The solution is obvious, continued Admiral Sura. We authorize a full military incursion, cleanser drones, atmospheric dispersants, eliminate the threat. The Searing Pack isn't just a threat. Dr. Arden spoke suddenly, her voice carrying with surprising authority for someone who spent most of her career in remote wilderness outposts. The chamber fell silent as all eyes turned to her. They're an integral part of Caldera's ecosystem. Preliminary scans suggest they regulate the planet's thermal vents. Remove them, and you risk destabilizing the entire crust. Admiral Sura's gaze hardened. And your evidence for this theory? Heat mapping from orbital scans. The Predator's movement patterns align perfectly with subterranean thermal fluctuations. They're not random hunters, they're patrolling. Ambassador Lecco's eyes widened. Patrolling implies sentience. Not necessarily, Dr. Arden corrected. It implies evolutionary adaptation. But yes, potentially higher cognition than we've ascribed to them. Fascinating theory. Admiral Sura's voice dripped with sarcasm. But it doesn't change the fact that these creatures have killed 126 of our people. Dr. Arden stood, activating her wrist display. The central hologram shifted, showing thermal footage of the crystalline felids, massive translucent panthers, with internal structures that glowed like magma. Their movements were coordinated, precise. We've only tried force, 42 armed teams as you've said. What if we tried something else? Something they haven't encountered before? The council secretary, a thin woman with implants at her temples, leaned forward. What exactly are you proposing, Dr. Arden? Send me, she said simply. One person, no weapons, just scientific equipment and communication devices. The chamber erupted in voices. Admiral Sura's laugh cut through the noise. You're suggesting we send you in unarmed to creatures that shredded armored personnel carriers? I'm suggesting, Dr. Arden continued steadily, that every other approach has failed spectacularly. These creatures appear to target armed groups specifically. Their sensory abilities likely detect energy weapons. But a single human with passive equipment might register differently. The Accord's head counselor, a man whose age was evident in both his silver hair and the gravitas with which he spoke, raised a hand for silence. The financial losses on Caldera 7 have been substantial. The political ramifications of abandoning it entirely would be worse. He studied Dr. Arden for a long moment. You understand what you're volunteering for. The survival probability is minimal. I understand, risk assessment counselor. I spent 3 years studying the hook-clawed titans of Proxima b. Those had a 96% kill rate for all researchers. I'm still here. The council secretary looked skeptical. And what's your objective exactly? First, confirm or refute my theory about their ecological role. Second, attempt non-aggressive contact. Third, investigate whether coexistence is possible. And if it isn't, Admiral Sura demanded. Dr. Arden met her gaze steadily. Then we'll have confirmation that military action is the only remaining option. The head counselor nodded slowly. The council will deliberate. Dr. Arden prepare a detailed mission proposal by morning cycle. After the chamber emptied, Dr. Arden remained studying the holographic beasts. Their crystalline bodies refracted light in hypnotic patterns, their movements graceful despite their massive size. Ambassador Lecco approached his steps nearly silent. A bold proposal. A necessary one, she replied, without looking away from the projection. Some would call it suicide. Now she turned to him, a half-smile on her face. All field research is calculated risk, Ambassador. The question isn't whether it's dangerous, it's whether the potential knowledge is worth the danger. And this knowledge, is it worth your life? Dr. Arden thought of the 42 teams of the mineral wealth that could advance civilization of the creatures whose existence was threatened by human expansion. If we can find a way to coexist with the most lethal predators we've encountered, it creates a precedent, not just for Caldera 7, but for every contested world. The ambassador nodded slowly. The council will approve your mission. Sura will oppose it, but she secretly prefers your death to the political fallout of a military operation that might fail. Be cautious, Doctor. Always, she replied, though both knew it was a lie. 3 days later, Dr. Tessa Arden stood in the launch bay of the Accord vessel, Icarus Dawn, watching as technicians performed final checks on her landing pod. The sleek, minimalist craft was designed for stealth rather than combat, heat-shielded, sensor-dampened, and equipped with the best scientific equipment the Accord could provide. Your survival probability has been calculated at 9.4%, announced the ship's AI through her earpiece. Its voice was deliberately neutral. Would you like to record final messages for next of kin? Not necessary, Dr. Arden replied, adjusting the environmental suit that would protect her from Caldera 7's hostile atmosphere. And the probability seems high. I was programmed for optimism. The AI responded with what might have been a hint of humor. The calculation factors in a slim chance of successful first contact, based on your past performance records. I'm flattered, she said dryly. Admiral Sura entered the bay, hands clasped behind her back. The Council has approved a 2-week window, if you establish meaningful contact signal for extraction. If not, then you proceed with the military option, Dr. Arden finished. I understand. The Admiral studied her with an unreadable expression. I've lost good people to those monsters. People who were armed and trained for combat. Perhaps that was the problem, Dr. Arden suggested quietly. Your arrogance may get you killed faster than their claws, Sura snapped. Then, unexpectedly, her expression softened slightly. Your research record is impressive, Dr. Arden. I hope for all our sakes that your theories prove correct. With that, she turned and left. Dr. Arden completed her pre-flight checks, secured her equipment, and sealed the pod's hatch. As the automated countdown began, she opened her journal on her datapad. Mission Log Caldera 7 Expedition. Day 0. The Galactic Accord has granted me 2 weeks to achieve what 42 armed teams could not. First contact with the crystalline apex predators, designated as the Searing Pack. My hypothesis: these creatures are not mindless killers, but ecological keystones with complex social structures. The Accord wants Stellarite. I want understanding. Someone's going to be disappointed. The pod shuddered as launch clamps released. Through the viewport, the docking bay fell away, replaced by the vast emptiness of space. Beyond, the angry orange-red sphere of Caldera 7 loomed. If I'm wrong, she continued typing, this will be a very short journal. The entry into Caldera 7's atmosphere was turbulent but controlled. Dr. Arden watched through reinforced viewports as the blackness of space gave way to swirls of sulfurous clouds in violent oranges and reds. The pod's heat shields glowed white-hot, the cabin temperature rising, despite the advanced cooling systems. Current external temperature 342 degrees Celsius, reported the pod's AI. Advisory surface conditions near landing zone exceed equipment tolerances for extended exposure. Noted. Dr. Arden responded, running final checks on her environmental suit. The specially designed garment was the latest in thermal regulation technology, but even it had limits. As the clouds parted, the landscape of Caldera 7th revealed itself a hellscape of obsidian mountains and rivers of molten rock, punctuated by geysers of superheated gas that reached hundreds of meters into the sky. The designated landing zone was a relatively stable plateau, surrounded by jagged glass-like formations. The landing was rougher than anticipated. A sudden thermal updraft caught the pod in its final descent, forcing a harder-than-optimal touchdown that rattled equipment and sent Dr. Arden's emergency rations tumbling from their storage compartment. Structural integrity at 92%, the pod reported. Environmental seal holding. External sensors indicate immediate vicinity, clear of life forms. Dr. Arden unstrapped herself and began methodically arranging her gear. The specially designed backpack contained water reclamation units, a portable atmospheric converter, emergency medical supplies, and her most precious cargo, a suite of scientific instruments designed to record and analyze everything from atmospheric composition to bioacoustic signals. Initiating surface deployment in 5 minutes, she announced, more for her own benefit than the AI's. Begin recording all sensor data. She paused, looking at the barren landscape through the viewport. And update survival probability. The AI took a noticeable pause before responding. Based on successful landing and current environmental readings, 12.7%. We're moving up in the world, she murmured, sealing her helmet. The first step onto Caldera 7's surface sent a shiver through Dr. Arden's body, despite the suit's cooling systems. The ground itself radiated heat like a furnace, and the air, what little wasn't toxic, wavered visibly. She activated her suit's enhanced vision mode, which overlaid thermal readings and atmospheric composition data onto her field of view. Beginning initial survey, she spoke into her helmet recorder. Immediate vicinity appears to be an elevated igneous formation. Silicate composition with high ferrous content, explaining the dark coloration. Thermal vents approximately 200 meters southeast. Primary objective: establish observation post with minimal environmental disruption. For 3 hours, Dr. Arden carefully traversed the hostile terrain, collecting samples and setting up remote sensors. Each was designed to be minimally invasive passive recording rather than active scanning to avoid alerting the searing pack to her presence prematurely. By the time she established her base camp, a small reflective shelter nestled between 2 obsidian spires, the planet's sun was setting, casting long shadows across the jagged landscape. The darkness brought little relief from the heat, but it did reveal new aspects of Caldera 7's environment. Certain rock formations glowed with a faint, pulsing bioluminescence. The thermal vents, barely visible during daylight, now illuminated the night with their fiery exhalations. Fascinating, she whispered, recording the phenomenon. The entire ecosystem appears to be adapted to extreme heat, possibly even harnessing it. She was about to retreat to her shelter when her suit's sensors detected movement, a subtle shift in thermal patterns, approximately half a kilometer away. She froze, enhancing the visual feed. There, moving with liquid grace across a ridge of black glass, was a crystalline silhouette. Even at this distance, she could make out its massive size, easily 3 meters at the shoulder, with a body structure reminiscent of Earth's great cats, but with faceted, translucent skin that caught and refracted the glow from nearby thermal vents. Dr. Arden felt her heart rate accelerate but forced herself to remain motionless. The creature paused, its head raised, as if sensing something amiss, then continued its patrol along the ridge before disappearing into a fissure. First visual confirmation of searing pack member, she whispered into her recorder. Subject appears to be following a predetermined route near thermal activity. Hypothesis supported these creatures are monitoring Caldera's geothermal network. She retreated to her shelter, sealed the entrance, and began downloading the day's data. Her encounter, brief as it was, had been encouraging. The predator had clearly sensed something unusual in its territory, but had not immediately charged to investigate. That suggested caution, rather than blind aggression, a promising sign for a species that supposedly left no survivors. End of day 1, she recorded in her journal. I am alive, which already exceeds some expectations. Tomorrow I move closer to the thermal vent network. If my theory is correct, that's where I'll find the heart of the pack's territory. She settled into her portable cot, the sounds of Caldera 7's geological activity, creating an ominous lullaby outside. Survival probability reassessment, she asked the portable AI unit she'd brought from the pod. Based on initial observations and continued non-aggressive stance from indigenous predators, 16.3%. We're on a roll, Dr. Arden murmured as she drifted into an uneasy sleep. The next 3 days established a pattern. Dr. Arden would carefully advance toward the network of thermal vents, leaving passive sensors behind, to create a monitoring grid. Each day brought more sightings of the searing pack, always at a distance, always near thermal activity, and always aware of her presence without directly confronting her. Day 4. She recorded crouched behind a heat-resistant blind she'd constructed near a major vent intersection. I've identified at least 7 distinct individuals based on crystalline patterning and size variations. They operate in coordinated patrols with larger specimens, presumed alphas, monitoring the most active vents. Through her high-powered thermal imaging, she watched as 2 of the creatures met at a fissure, touching crystal-faceted foreheads in what appeared to be a greeting ritual. Their internal structures pulsed with light, suggesting some form of communication. They're not just monitoring the vents, she realized aloud. They're communicating with each other about them. This is coordinated ecological management. Her equipment had been steadily collecting data on the vents themselves, superheated gas rich in minerals, and compounds that would be toxic to most life forms. Yet, the searing pack seemed to thrive in proximity to them, sometimes deliberately inhaling the emissions. Hypothesis update, she recorded. The searing pack may have evolved as symbiotic regulators of Caldera 7's thermal network. Their crystalline physiology likely allows them to process and potentially neutralize harmful compounds that would otherwise reach the atmosphere. That night, Dr. Arden's shelter was rattled by a planet-quake minor, by Caldera 7 standards, but terrifying nonetheless. The tremor lasted only seconds, but when it subsided, her sensors detected increased thermal activity throughout the vent network. More significantly, they detected increased searing pack activity. They're responding to the quake, she observed, watching thermal signatures converge on the most affected areas. Not fleeing from it, moving toward it. By dawn, her theory had solidified. The crystalline predators weren't just adapted to Caldera 7's extreme environment. They were an essential part of it. Their behavior following the tremor suggested they actively worked to prevent thermal events from cascading into larger catastrophes. On day 5, everything changed. Dr. Arden had ventured closer to the central vent network than ever before, driven by the need to confirm her findings with direct observation. The terrain was treacherous, sharp obsidian formations interspersed with bubbling pools of molten material that could melt through her suit in seconds. She was recording readings from a particularly active vent when her proximity sensors shrieked a warning. Movement fast and determined, coming directly toward her position. Heart racing, she ducked behind a ridge of black glass, activating her suit's adaptive camouflage. The feature wouldn't hide her completely in this environment, but it might buy precious seconds. Those seconds never came. When she peered cautiously over the ridge, she found herself face to face with one of the searing pack. The creature was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. At close range, she could see that its crystalline body wasn't solid, but composed of thousands of intricate, interlocking facets that shifted with each breath. Inside, Energy pulsed like liquid magma, concentrating in what appeared to be neural pathways and a central core, analogous to a heart. Its eyes, if they could be called that, were deeper concentrations of energy that focused on her with unmistakable intelligence. Dr. Arden froze every instinct, screaming at her to run, despite the futility of such action. The creature was close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from its body, its breath carrying the scent of sulfur and something metallic. It made no move to attack. Instead, it lowered its massive head to her eye level, the facets near its mouth shifting to reveal crystalline structures that resembled teeth perfect for tearing through metal and flesh alike. "Hello," Dr. Arden said softly, speaking aloud, though her voice was contained within her helmet. "I mean no harm." The creature tilted its head slightly, as if puzzled by the sound-dampening effect of her suit. With deliberate movements, Dr. Arden reached for her external speaker system, designed for high-fidelity acoustic sampling. She activated it, allowing her voice to project outward. "I'm here to learn," she said, keeping her tone even despite her racing heart. "Not to hunt, not to harm." The crystalline predator's reaction was immediate and unexpected. It stepped back, the energy patterns within its body shifting rapidly. From somewhere deep in its chest came a sound, a resonant hum, that vibrated through Dr. Arden's suit and seemed to permeate the very air. Before she could process this response, two more of the creatures appeared, flanking the first. They were slightly smaller, but no less imposing, their crystalline bodies catching and refracting the light from nearby vents. "3 subjects now present," she whispered into her recorder, fighting to keep her voice steady. "No aggressive posturing. They appear to be assessing." The first creature, the largest of the 3, made the resonant humming sound again. The other 2 responded with similar but distinct tones, creating a harmonic pattern that Dr. Arden felt in her bones. "They're communicating," she realized. "Possibly about me." In a moment of scientific instinct bordering on recklessness, Dr. Arden activated her acoustic sampling equipment, recording the harmonic pattern. Then, after a brief analysis, she used the speaker to replicate the sound, not exactly, but close enough to be recognizable. The effect was electric. All 3 creatures went absolutely still, their internal energy patterns pulsing rapidly. The leader took a step forward, its faceted head tilting in what could only be described as curiosity. Slowly, deliberately, Dr. Arden reached into her pack and removed a small device, a resonance emitter she'd brought to study geological formations. She calibrated it to produce a low-frequency tone, similar to the creature's communication, but distinct enough to be identified as foreign. The emitter hummed to life, sending vibrations through the obsidian ground. The trio of predators shifted position, moving from a confrontational triangle to a looser formation that surrounded Dr. Arden but left her unconfined. "I believe," she recorded quietly, "they're accepting my presence. Not as prey, not as threat, but as something they haven't categorized yet." For nearly an hour, the strange communion continued. Dr. Arden would adjust the frequency of her emitter, and the creatures would respond with their own harmonic patterns. She recorded everything, analyzing the patterns for repetition, variation, response triggers. When the sky began to darken with Caldera 7's swift sunset, the leader of the trio made a decisive sound, a sharp, crystalline note that seemed to end the interaction. Without aggression, but with unmistakable purpose, the 3 predators turned and moved away, disappearing into the labyrinth of thermal vents and obsidian formations. Dr. Arden released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Day 5. She recorded later, safe in her shelter but still trembling from the encounter. First, direct contact with the searing pack. 3 individuals, including what I believe to be a pack leader. No aggression. Rudimentary communication established through harmonic resonance. She paused, reviewing the acoustic data. The implications are staggering. These aren't mindless predators. They possess a communication system, social hierarchy, and the capacity to recognize non-threatening outsiders. The portable AI chimed in. Survival probability reassessment 31.8%. Dr. Arden allowed herself a small smile. Those are the best odds I've had in years. Over the next 3 days, Dr. Arden's interactions with the Searing Pack evolved with remarkable speed. Each morning she would venture to the location of their previous encounter, activate her resonance emitter with a specific harmonic pattern, and wait. Within hours, members of the pack would appear, sometimes the original 3, sometimes different individuals, but always approaching with the same cautious curiosity. Day 8. She recorded watching as 5 of the crystalline predators lounged near a thermal vent, seemingly comfortable with her presence. I've identified 13 distinct individuals with clear social stratification. The largest, whom I've designated Cinder, due to the unique ember-like pattern in its core, appears to be the alpha. Younger members defer to older ones through specific harmonic patterns that I'm beginning to recognize as a form of language. She had developed a rudimentary understanding of their communication system, not words, but resonant frequencies that conveyed emotional states, warnings about thermal activity, and territorial information. By carefully modulating her emitter, she could produce sounds that the pack interpreted as non-threatening communication. More remarkably, they had begun to escort her through their territory. Each day, they would lead her to different thermal vents, sometimes watching as she collected samples, other times actively demonstrating their interaction with the geological features. "It's extraordinary," she reported during a scheduled check-in with the Icarus Dawn. "They're showing me their work. When a vent becomes too active, they use their crystalline bodies to absorb excess heat and pressure. They can literally draw thermal energy into themselves, store it, and release it elsewhere in controlled emissions." Admiral Sura's voice crackled through the communication link. "And the stellarite deposits?" "Accessible," Dr. Arden confirmed, but with caveats. "The deposits are concentrated around inactive vents, ones that the pack has deliberately sealed to prevent eruptions. Mining them would require their cooperation." Cooperation. Sura's skepticism was evident even through the distorted connection. "You're suggesting we negotiate with animals?" "I'm suggesting," Dr. Arden replied carefully, "that we recognize an indigenous species' territorial rights and ecological role. The Searing Pack isn't just surviving here, they're maintaining planetary stability. Remove them and Caldera 7's crust could collapse within a standard year." There was a long pause before the Admiral responded. "The Council will need more than theories, Dr. Arden. They'll need proof of concept." "I'm working on it," she assured him, though in truth she had no idea how to formalize an agreement with creatures whose language consisted of harmonic resonances. That night, Dr. Arden's shelter rocked with the most violent planetquake yet. The obsidian spires that had provided protection now threatened to collapse and crush her. Outside, the sky glowed red with increased volcanic activity. "Warning," the AI announced with unexpected urgency. "Thermal readings indicate catastrophic vent failure approximately 3 kilometers northeast. Magma chamber destabilizing." Dr. Arden scrambled to review the sensor data. The AI was right. A major thermal vent had ruptured, releasing pressure that had been building for decades. The resulting chain reaction threatened to trigger a cascading failure throughout the network. "Analysis," she demanded, pulling on her environmental suit, despite the damage it had sustained during 8 days of constant use. "Probability of major tectonic event 74.3%. Projected casualties to Searing Pack habitat significant. Recommend immediate evacuation to orbital vessel." But Dr. Arden wasn't listening anymore. She was watching the thermal imaging from her sensor network, tracking the rapid movement of crystalline signatures converging on the rupture. "They're responding," she whispered. "They're trying to contain it." Without fully processing the recklessness of her decision, Dr. Arden grabbed her essential equipment and rushed outside. The night air was thick with toxic gases, the ground trembling beneath her feet. In the distance, she could see the glow of magma breaching the surface, a fountain of liquid fire reaching toward the sulfurous clouds. Her suit sensors immediately detected Searing Pack members, racing past her position, all headed toward the catastrophe. Among them was Cinder the Alpha's massive form, unmistakable even at a distance. They can't contain this alone, she realized. The eruption is too massive. That's when her sensors detected something else, something that didn't belong in this primordial landscape. A mechanical signature, emitting energy patterns consistent with advanced mining equipment. Magnify, she commanded her visor, focusing on the area near the rupture. The image clarified, revealing a massive automaton, one of the Accord's deep core mining units. Its titanium alloy limbs were extended into the ruptured vent, its drilling apparatus still active despite the obvious danger. That's what caused this, Dr. Arden realized with horror. It breached a sealed vent. She opened an emergency channel to the Icarus Dawn. Orbital Command, I'm detecting unauthorized mining activity at coordinates 4287-13. A rogue automaton has breached a critical thermal vent and triggered a potential extinction level event. Admiral Sura's voice came through tense but controlled. Impossible. All mining operations were suspended pending your mission outcome. Tell that to the 60-ton mining bot currently turning Caldera 7 into a bomb, Dr. Arden snapped. Can you override it remotely? Negative. Those units operate on closed systems to prevent hacking. If it's gone rogue, the failsafe is a direct shutdown via physical access port. Dr. Arden watched as several Searing Pack members reached the automaton, their crystalline claws raking against its reinforced hull, with little effect. The machine continued its work oblivious to the damage it was causing, as magma spurted around its drilling arms. I'm going in, she decided aloud. The pack is trying to stop it but can't penetrate the hull. I know the shutdown protocols. Arden, that's suicide, Sura protested. The heat levels alone. We'll kill everything on this planet if that vent fully ruptures, Dr. Arden finished. Including your precious stellarite deposits. Send the extraction team to my coordinates. I'll either succeed, or you won't need to worry about my extraction. She cut the communication and began moving toward the eruption each step, bringing her closer to heat levels that tested the absolute limits of her suit's capabilities. Around her, the landscape was transforming obsidian formations, melting into new configurations, toxic gases igniting in brief, spectral flames. She was halfway to the rupture when a crystalline form appeared beside her Cinder, the alpha predator, keeping pace with her desperate march. You understand what's happening, Dr. Arden said, though she knew the creature couldn't comprehend her words. She activated her resonance emitter, producing the harmonic pattern she'd come to associate with mutual cooperation. Cinder responded with a complex harmonic that vibrated through the ground. Moments later, two more of the Searing Pack appeared on her other side, flanking her, in what could only be described as a protective formation. Together, they approached the chaotic scene. The mining automaton stood in a lake of molten rock, its reinforced legs impervious to the heat, as it continued to drill deeper. Around it, 6 of the crystalline predators were attempting to contain the eruption, their bodies glowing white-hot as they absorbed thermal energy. They can't keep this up, Dr. Arden realized. The pack members were reaching their capacity, their crystalline forms beginning to show stress fractures from the immense heat they were absorbing. She assessed the automaton from a safe distance, her scientific mind racing through options. The machine's physical access port would be on its central housing protected by a maintenance panel, unreachable, while it stood in molten rock. But there was another vulnerability. The automaton relied on advanced sensors to avoid drilling into unstable formations, sensors that operated on specific frequencies to detect density changes and thermal variations. That's it, she whispered, turning to her equipment. With quick, precise movements, she recalibrated her resonance emitter to produce a frequency that would overload the automaton's sensory array. Ah, Cinder, she said, looking at the massive predator beside her. She couldn't know if the creature recognized the designation she'd given it, but it turned its faceted head toward her nonetheless. She activated the emitter, producing a distinct pattern danger, followed by cooperation. The Alpha Predator's response was immediate. It moved forward, positioning itself between Dr. Arden and the eruption. Two more pack members joined it, creating a heat shield that allowed her to advance closer to the automaton. The ground shook violently as she approached fissures opening in the obsidian surface. The air temperature had risen beyond the capacity of her suit to regulate, and she could feel the heat penetrating, turning her skin slick with sweat that instantly evaporated. With trembling hands, she adjusted the final settings on her emitter and activated it at maximum power. The effect was not immediate. For several agonizing seconds, the automaton continued its drilling, oblivious to the havoc it was creating. Then, its movement stuttered. Its sensory array, overwhelmed by the conflicting frequencies, initiated an emergency diagnostic protocol that temporarily suspended all operations. It wasn't a shutdown, but it created a window of opportunity. The Searing Pack recognized the change instantly. 8 of them moved as one, positioning themselves around the stalled machine. Using their crystalline bodies as leverage points, they began to push the automaton away from the ruptured vent. Dr. Arden watched in awe as the massive machine slid across the molten surface, leaving a wake of cooling rock. Once it was clear of the immediate eruption, Cinder and the 3 largest pack members converged on the vent itself. They extended crystalline limbs into the flowing magma, their bodies glowing brighter as they absorbed the thermal energy. The ground continued to shake, but the violent tremors began to subside. The fountain of magma receded gradually as the pack redirected the pressure, channeling it through their bodies and releasing it in controlled bursts through smaller, dormant vents nearby. Dr. Arden monitored the process through her sensors, recording everything despite the danger. "They're not just containing it," she reported into her recorder. "They're redistributing the pressure throughout the network, engineering a controlled release." For nearly an hour, the pack worked in coordinated harmony, their bodies stretched to their physical limits as they stabilized the ruptured vent. Dr. Arden maintained the disruptive frequency, keeping the automaton in diagnostic mode, until finally, mercifully, its emergency protocols activated a complete system shutdown. As the immediate crisis passed, Dr. Arden felt the toll the extreme conditions had taken on her body. Her suit was compromised, environmental regulators failing. She could feel her consciousness slipping as the toxic atmosphere began to seep through degraded seals. The last thing she saw before collapsing was Cinder approaching its crystalline form, still radiating heat, but no longer glowing white-hot. Its faceted head tilted in what appeared to be concern as darkness claimed her. Dr. Tessa Arden awakened to the sterile environment of the Icarus Dawn's medical bay, the constant hum of life support systems replacing Caldera 7's geological symphony. For a moment, she feared the entire experience had been a dream, or worse, that she had been evacuated and the Searing Pack left to their fate. "The patient is conscious," announced the medical AI. "Vital signs stabilizing." Admiral Sura's face appeared in her field of vision, the military woman's expression uncharacteristically thoughtful. "Welcome back to the land of the living, Dr. Arden. You've been unconscious for 26 hours. Dr. Arden tried to speak, found her throat parched, and accepted the hydration tube offered by a medical drone. After several swallows, she managed the pack, the eruption. "Contained," Sura confirmed. "The extraction team found you unconscious, but alive. Your suit was completely compromised, yet somehow you weren't suffering from toxic exposure. The team reported that you were surrounded." Memory flickered through Dr. Arden's mind, crystalline forms creating a protective circle, filtering the air around her fallen body. "They protected me," she whispered. "So it would seem." The Admiral's tone was neutral, but her eyes betrayed her wonder. The team also reported something else. 4 of the creatures approached the extraction vessel voluntarily. They're currently in a containment bay, modified to suit their environmental needs. Dr. Arden struggled to sit up. "They're aboard here." Sura nodded. "Apparently they refuse to be separated from you. The extraction team had little choice. It was either bring them aboard or fight through them to reach you. I need to see them. Dr. Arden swung her legs over the edge of the medical bed, ignoring the protests of both the Admiral and the medical AI. You're in no condition. They're pack animals, Dr. Arden interrupted. Highly social. Being separated from their environment and their pack will cause extreme stress. I'm the only connection they have to anything familiar. The Admiral hesitated, then nodded curtly. A transport drone will take you. But at the first sign of danger, we're flooding that bay with neutralizing agents. There won't be any danger, Dr. Arden assured her, accepting a support frame to help her walk. They saved my life. Twice. The containment bay had been converted into a makeshift habitat, with thermal generators creating heat zones, reminiscent of Caldera 7's vent networks. Inside, 4 of the crystalline predators paced restlessly, their internal energy patterns fluctuating in what Dr. Arden now recognized as distress. One of them was Cinder. As soon as she entered, all 4 creatures turned toward her, their faceted heads focusing with laser precision. Dr. Arden fumbled for the resonance emitter she'd brought from the medical bay, activating it with shaking hands. The harmonics of greeting and reassurance filled the chamber. The effect was immediate. The pack members relaxed their posture, their energy patterns stabilizing. Cinder approached the observation barrier, placing one crystalline paw against the transparent material. They recognize you, Admiral Sura observed from the safety of the control room. More than that, Dr. Arden replied. They chose to come. They're not prisoners, they're ambassadors. Over the next 3 days, as the Icarus Dawn maintained orbit around Caldera 7, Dr. Arden worked tirelessly to establish a more sophisticated communication system with the 4 pack members. Using combinations of harmonic resonances, light patterns, and simple physical movements, she began to build a rudimentary translation matrix. The breakthrough came on the 2nd day, when she managed to communicate the concept of the mining automaton as a threat and the Accord as a separate entity that had not authorized its actions. They understand the difference, she reported to an assembled group of Accord officials, including Admiral Sura and Ambassador Lecco. They recognized that the automaton was functioning independently from our intentions. And the Stellarite asked the Accord's resource allocation director, a practical woman whose focus remained squarely on the economic implications. That's where it gets interesting, Dr. Arden replied, displaying a holographic map of Caldera 7's surface. The pack has indicated specific regions where mining would not disrupt their thermal management network, areas where vents have been naturally sealed and stabilized over time. She highlighted several regions on the map. These zones contain approximately 64% of the planet's stellarite deposits. The pack is willing to permit extraction under specific conditions. Conditions, Admiral Sura's eyebrow raised. From animals. Dr. Arden met her gaze steadily. From the indigenous species that has kept that planet from tearing itself apart for millennia. Yes, conditions. She activated another hologram, a simplified treaty document, with visual representations that the pack members had reviewed and acknowledged through their own communication methods. First, all mining must be conducted under their observation. They need to ensure that no active or sealed vents are compromised. Second, 10% of extracted stellarite remains on Caldera 7, stored in specific locations they've identified. What possible use could they have for processed stellarite? Asked Ambassador Lecco. They don't use it directly, Dr. Arden explained. But when positioned correctly, stellarite crystals can help stabilize minor thermal fluctuations, essentially serving as pressure release valves. They've been collecting naturally occurring fragments for generations. The resource director leaned forward, intrigued. And the third condition? Recognition, Dr. Arden said simply. Formal acknowledgement by the Galactic Accord that Caldera 7 is their sovereign territory, with humans operating there, by mutual agreement, not by right of discovery or claim. The room fell silent as the implications settled. Recognition of non-human sovereignty was not unprecedented in Accord law, but it remained controversial, particularly when the species in question lacked conventional technological development. Finally, Ambassador Lecco spoke. "I believe we can work with these terms. The practical benefits of cooperation far outweigh the philosophical discomfort some may feel." Admiral Sura nodded slowly. "The alternative is continued military losses or abandonment of a vital resource. From a strategic perspective, cooperation is the only logical choice." One by one, the Accord officials voiced their tentative support. The resource director, however, remained skeptical. "How can we be certain these creatures won't turn on our mining teams the moment they return to their planet? We have only your word that they understand these concepts." Dr. Arden smiled slightly. "I anticipated that concern." She activated the chamber's communication system. "Cinder, would you and the others please demonstrate your understanding?" On cue, the 4 crystalline predators arranged themselves in a specific formation that Dr. Arden had taught them, the symbolic representation of the Accord seal. Then, using their harmonic capabilities, they produced a sequence of tones that corresponded to key terms in the proposed agreement territory: cooperation, protection. "They understand far more than we've given them credit for," Dr. Arden explained. "And they're willing to learn more. They recognize the mutual benefits of this arrangement." The demonstration had its intended effect. The resource director's skepticism visibly softened. "Very well. I will support bringing this proposal to the full council." 3 days later, Dr. Tessa Arden stood once again in the Galactic Accord's high-security summit chamber. This time, however, she was not alone at the outermost ring. Beside her, contained within a specially designed environmental field, stood Cinder and the 3 other pack members who had volunteered to accompany her. Their presence caused considerable commotion. Many delegates had never seen the crystalline predators except in tactical footage of failed military engagements. To see them standing calmly alongside a human scientist, their internal energy patterns stable and non-threatening, challenged everything the Accord thought it knew about the Searing Pack. The head counselor called the session to order, his voice carrying authority that quieted even the most agitated delegates. "We are convened today to consider a historic proposal, the Caldera 7 Cooperative Resource Agreement negotiated by Dr. Tessa Arden with representatives of the indigenous species, designated as the Searing Pack." He gestured toward Dr. Arden. "Doctor, please present your findings and the terms of the proposed agreement." Dr. Arden stepped forward, activating the chamber's central holographic display. Images of Caldera 7's surface appeared alongside thermal mapping that demonstrated the pack's ecological role. "Counselors, delegates, what you are seeing is not simply a hostile environment with dangerous predators. You are witnessing one of the most sophisticated examples of evolutionary adaptation and ecological management ever documented. The Searing Pack has evolved in symbiosis with Caldera 7's thermal network. They don't merely survive the planet's extreme conditions, they regulate them." She displayed footage from her expedition, pack members absorbing thermal energy from overactive vents, redirecting pressure through their crystalline bodies, patrolling and monitoring the entire network with precision that rivaled the Accord's best geological management systems. When the mining automaton breached a sealed vent, it wasn't just damaging their territory, it was threatening a delicate balance that has taken thousands of years to perfect. The pack's response wasn't aggression, it was preservation. Dr. Arden then outlined the terms of the proposed agreement, emphasizing the mutual benefits: sustainable stellarite extraction for the Accord, continued ecological stability for Caldera 7 and its indigenous guardians. "This isn't merely a utilitarian arrangement," she concluded. "It's an ethical imperative. The Searing Pack has demonstrated intelligent social complexity and a willingness to cooperate despite our previous hostilities. They deserve our respect as fellow sentients sharing this galaxy." When she finished, the chamber erupted in discussions. Ambassador Lecco spoke in favor of the agreement, highlighting the diplomatic precedent it would set for future encounters with non-technological sentient species. Admiral Sura, surprising many, emphasized the practical benefits of avoiding further military losses. Opposition came primarily from representatives of mining consortiums and colonies dependent on unrestricted resource acquisition. They argued that recognizing indigenous rights on resource-rich worlds could set a dangerous precedent that might restrict human expansion. The debate continued for hours, with Dr. Arden fielding questions about the Pact's intelligence, their understanding of the agreement, and the practicalities of human-Pact cooperation in the hostile environment. Finally, the head counselor called for a vote. The chamber's lighting dimmed as delegates registered their positions through secure terminals. Dr. Arden stood beside her crystalline companions, heart racing, as she awaited the outcome. The head counselor's voice broke the tense silence. By a vote of 37 in favor 6, opposed, the Galactic Accord hereby ratifies the Caldera 7 Cooperative Resource Agreement, recognizing the territorial sovereignty of the indigenous species, designated as the Searing Pact, and establishing protocols for mutual cooperation in stellarite extraction. A murmur of approval spread through the chamber. Dr. Arden turned to Cinder and the others, activating her resonance emitter to convey the news. The crystalline predators responded with a harmonic pattern she had come to recognize as satisfaction. "There is one additional matter," the head counselor continued. "In recognition of this historic agreement and the new understanding it represents, this council proposes a formal redesignation of the indigenous species of Caldera 7. He looked directly at Dr. Arden. "Doctor, you have spent more time with these beings than any other human. What designation would you propose that better reflects their ecological role and our new relationship?" Dr. Arden considered for a moment, then smiled. "They are the guardians of their world's lifeblood, its thermal balance. I propose the Searing Guardians of Caldera." The designation was approved by unanimous consent. In the months that followed, the partnership between humans and the Searing Guardians exceeded even Dr. Arden's optimistic projections. Under the careful observation of Guardian representatives, mining operations were established in stable zones throughout Caldera 7. Stellarite extraction rates tripled compared to previous attempts without a single thermal incident or loss of human life. More remarkably, the relationship evolved beyond mere resource extraction. Dr. Arden continued her work on communication systems, developing more sophisticated translation matrices that allowed for increasingly complex exchanges of information. The Guardians, for their part, demonstrated an unexpected eagerness to learn about the wider galaxy and human technology. A permanent research station was established in orbit around Caldera 7, with specially designed modules that could accommodate both human scientists and Guardian representatives. There, collaborative studies led to breakthroughs in thermal management technology, crystalline computing, and environmental adaptation techniques. 1 year after the historic agreement, Dr. Tessa Arden stood on a viewing platform overlooking a stabilized mining zone on Caldera 7's surface. Beside her stood Cinder, the massive Guardian, who had first accepted her presence in their territory. Through a combination of the advanced translation matrix and thousands of hours of direct interaction, they could now communicate on a level that approached conversation. "Your people learn quickly," Dr. Arden observed, watching as human technicians worked alongside Guardian observers, carefully extracting stellarite crystals from a sealed thermal vent. A year ago, most humans believed this cooperation impossible. Cinder's crystalline form shifted internal energy patterns, forming what Dr. Arden had come to recognize as the equivalent of thoughtful consideration. Through the translation matrix, a response formed. "Adaptation is survival. Your kind adapts through technology. Ours through form and function, both valid paths." "Some paths converge," Dr. Arden noted, gesturing to the collaborative work below. "As they should," came Cinder's translated response. "No species thrives in isolation." Dr. Arden smiled at the philosophical depth of the statement. Early in her career, she had argued passionately that apex predators could be reasoned with, that intelligence and cooperation weren't exclusive to prey species or those with obvious technological markers. Her colleagues had dismissed the theory as idealistic at best, dangerous at worst. Now, as Guardian representatives began to appear at Accord summits and human scientific outposts sprung up across Caldera 7th, that theory had become reality. "I've been asked to lead a new initiative," she told Cinder. "The Accord wants to review other worlds where indigenous species have been classified as hostile, to see if we've misunderstood their behavior or ecological role, as we did with your people." Cinder's energy patterns shifted in what she had learned to interpret as approval. "You see with different eyes now. You will find others like us, not in form, but in purpose, guardians of their worlds." "I hope so," Dr. Arden replied. "The galaxy could use more guardians." Later that evening, she recorded what would become a widely distributed educational testament about the Caldera 7 experience. "We went to Caldera 7 seeking resources, believing ourselves entitled to them by virtue of our technology and ambition. We categorized its indigenous life as obstacles to be removed or managed. When 42 armed teams failed to secure what we wanted, we called them hostile, predatory, mindless." She paused, considering her words carefully. "What we failed to understand was that we were never the apex predators in that environment. We were visitors in a complex ecosystem, maintained by beings whose intelligence and purpose we didn't recognize because it didn't mirror our own. The searing guardians of Caldera aren't mindless killers. They're planetary stewards whose existence revolves around protection and balance." Dr. Arden looked out at the viewing screen showing Caldera 7's swirling orange atmosphere, so hostile to human life, yet so perfectly suited to the crystalline guardians who thrive there. The lesson of Caldera 7 isn't just about resource extraction or diplomatic protocols. It's about humility. It's about recognizing that true apex power lies not in weapons or aggression, but in empathy, adaptability, and partnership. The Guardians didn't just teach us how to access stellar rights safely, they taught us how to be better galactic citizens. She smiled slightly. "And perhaps someday to become Guardians ourselves." In the years that followed, Dr. Arden's initiative led to similar breakthroughs on a dozen worlds where human expansion had stalled in the face of seemingly hostile indigenous life. On each, what had been classified as aggression was revealed as protection of territory, of ecological balance, of evolutionary purpose. The searing guardians of Caldera, meanwhile, became respected interstellar ambassadors, their unique perspective on planetary stewardship influencing Accord policies throughout the galaxy. Their crystalline forms, once feared as monstrous predators, became symbols of ecological wisdom and cooperation across species boundaries. And on Caldera 7 itself, where rivers of molten rock flowed beneath a sulphurous sky, humans and Guardians continued their unlikely partnership, each teaching the other that the greatest strength comes not from domination, but from extending a hand or paw across the divide of different worlds.